Can I just say, first of all, the irony of me being underneath this sign is not lost on me. I like to think in a parallel universe, Jeremy Clarkson is doing a session on what women want. And we somehow meet in the middle. Unusual situation for me. I'm the only woman in an all-male panel, so I'm going to have to just deal with that. Today's session, we're going to talk about the fact that television often dominated by men on-screen and off-screen. But we're talking about the third point in that essential triangle, the man sitting on the sofa, the man as viewer. Our four panellists today are actual, real men, uniquely qualified, therefore, to talk on the subject. Let me introduce them. The first guest here needs no introduction, but I shall do so nonetheless. He's been in Grange Hill, Top of the Pops, sometimes appears on navel-gazing industry panels, such as this one. I'm actually, technically, not really allowed to sit this close to him after a sexting incident, but, you know, I'm just chancing my arm, quite literally. Please welcome magnificent broadcaster, writer and director, Reggie Yates. Steve over there, Steve North, is the general manager of UK TV entertainment channels Dave, Gold and W. In 2007, he led the rebrand of UK TV G2 to Dave, the home of witty banter. You don't need to take notes, because if you miss anything that Steve says today, it will be repeated after traffic cops. Until the end of time.
I'll say everything twice.
Tim Whitwell, creative director at Shine Television. Many of you will know him. After a sandals holiday in Barbados, where he was forced to drink his own urine and slaughter a yak, he conceived the BAFTA-winning format The Island with Bear Grylls. He's one of the executive producers on C4's Hunted. I don't know why I said C4. It's Channel 4. Let's just all call it C4 for today, which is returning. I think that's a car made by Citroën. He's returning for Series 2 in a matter of weeks. Cars. Finally, Simon Dixon is not Rory Sutherland. So if any massive Rory Sutherland fans have turned up today...
He's better looking.
Some say he's a bit better than Rory. Simon, as many of you will know, is the creative director of Label One, the recent producer of Channel 4. C4 was the job interview. Before setting up his own label, he was executive producer on First Dates and is best known for pioneering at Channel 4 the fixed rig style of documentary making, commissioning the likes of The Family, One Born Every Minute, and 24 Hours in A&E. I just realised I individually made you applaud Reggie. There's no individual applause. So let's have a sort of unilateral wave of love for all of them. Now listen, nothing gets a party started like a PowerPoint presentation, so let's get the fun rolling right now, okay? Let's have a look at this. So, there you go. Average man watches 30 minutes of television a day less than women. The ratio reflected in all day and peak. The average man watches 3 hours 20 minutes. The average woman, 3 hours 52 minutes. That 20 minutes, of course, accounts for the massive mandatory man poo 3/4 of the way through New Tricks. Harder to reach.
You still know the storyline.
That was the laughter of someone who knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Shirt off, man.
And as you can read the rest. I'm not going to say it out loud. I'm going to believe in you and the power of your eyes to assimilate that information through the normal sensory mechanisms. So I suppose off the back of that, the question that I'm going to ask is TV failing men? I'm going to go to you for sort of quick answers to start off with. I'm going to start with you, Reggie.
TV, yes. Content, no.
TV content is failing men?
No, TV, yes.
TV,
content as a whole, no.
Oh, okay, so you think a different platform might...
Yeah.
Well, okay, we'll go into that. We shall move into that. Tim, what do you reckon? Is it failing men?
I've got to think of something more intelligent than Reggie to say, but I can't think. I think it isn't failing men all the time, but when it's really boring, it is failing men. Okay.
So you need to be almost constantly stimulated, Tim?
Yes, I do, actually. Yeah. So if there's any takers for after the session, I'm available. So.
That's good. I always like to start a session with mild sexual threats. Yeah. That's good. So...
Brave direction to go down. Brave direction to go down.
Simon...
really weird.
It's really weird. So, Simon, is it failing men, do you think?
I haven't quite decided yet. I'm going to give you my answer at the end of the panel.
You're such a tease.
Look,
you could say it now and then maybe you could change your mind and that would be like a character arc.
Okay, look.
He's a chameleon,
It's quite hard coming up with a one-word answer to a question. I don't think it is particularly, so you don't know is my short answer.
All right, okay. Steve, what do you reckon?
No.
What are we all doing here then?
His channel's not failing men, is it?
I don't think TV's failing men. I think TV serves women better, but I don't think it's failing men.
Okay, so we've got almost 2 saying yes, 2 saying no. Let's go to what our audience thinks. So Channel 4 commissioned a survey specifically for this session, asked men across the country whether or not they felt underserved. Here are the responses. Let's have a look. When asked to name a show made with men in mind, the vast majority of men can't think of one or chose Top Gear. A lot just said none, obviously. Once you remove Top Gear, that's what they said. There you go. One man just saying take there. Just don't know what that is. Just take. And the big one, men aged 25 to 54 think that there aren't enough shows with their own interests in mind. And the other half switched off, presumably because they're watching something like Prisoner of War camps. Are you surprised, Tim, by that?
Yeah, I'm surprised that men are that bothered to actually answer a survey like that, to be honest. So I think that basically men want to watch gripping TV with great stories, and they don't think, I'm going to turn on for a kind of man programme. And sometimes I think you can get men watching by stealth. So you start telling a good story, you have a good premise or a headline for a show, and then they're like, I'm not really want to watch a show about desert islands, and they think, oh my God, I'm Robinson Crusoe now, I could be on that island, and you kind of do it by stealth. So that's what I think.
So you have to programme by stealth. Do you agree, Steve?
Just going back to the first numbers you had about, so the average man's watching 3 hours, 20 minutes of TV a day. That is, 14% of the day that men are watching TV. If you assume they're sleeping for some of that day, it's probably almost 25% of the day that men are watching TV. I find it quite hard to say that a medium that a man is watching for 25% of the day is failing them. I mean, women are watching more, so it's serving the female audience better, but I'm not sure it's failing men. Can we do more? Can we do better? Absolutely, and we should do better, and we should do more programmes for everybody and ensure that the entire kind of country and diversity and the variety of content is out there and is served. But I'm not sure the starting point is that it's being failed. I just think we can do more for that audience.
Any thoughts why some men might feel underserved, Simon?
Well, it's interesting what you were saying there. I mean, I think there's a difference, isn't there, between niche programming and mainstream programming. So if you take a look at what happened at Top Gear, I used to really enjoy it. And maybe that's because it was a sort of a sacred space of maleness where things could be explored in a kind of clubby way.
I love the idea of it being a sacred space.
Those journeys that used to go on, you would really want to go on those journeys.
Yeah.
And you really want to travel to those countries, and you transpose your best mates onto whichever of the 2 members of the trio you weren't. In other words, if you were Clarks and you were thinking, who would I take with me on a journey like that, and wouldn't it be fun? And part of the fun is that notion of travelling without women. And
but who's going to do your map reading for you?
Look, I do. When we go on holiday, we just come back from the States. I do the map reading. Let me just get this out there. I love my wife, right? But in order for a program to really sort of.
Should we go?
Why am I here? Okay. There was something about the old. There was something. No, look. Seriously, we've got to talk about shows, right, as well as just stats. Because half of the men say it's bad. Well, what about the half of the men that say it's good? I mean, it's stats, damn lies and statistics. That was a brilliant show, okay? It flirted with racism and sexism in a way that at times was perhaps a bit on the dodgy side. But it was a brilliant show.
Can you flirt with racism?
Well, you can apparently when you're building a bridge in a Southeast Asian country, yes. But what it became was too inclusive. Big, broad, suddenly there's 10 presenters. And suddenly it lost that character. So when it comes up there with Top Gear, #1 show on the screen, as something which defined men's sense of what is a good program to watch, and to an extent defines your brand, that was the sweet spot for male skewing television. And we are a poorer place for not having that version of the show before, pardon the pun, the wheels came off.
So, but you like Top Gear, and you think Top Gear is a great brand because it feels very exclusive. It feels very gender skewed, and when you watch it, you like to imagine a world without women. or at least a journey
It's a
without women.
fantasy. I mean,
Yeah.
the programs that I like to watch best, the ones I can watch with my wife, they are diverse, they are enriching, they are a bit female skewing. I mean, I've commissioned, when I was at Channel 4, quite a number of the programs on the list here, which speaks to the best performing female skewing
Yeah,
shows.
yeah.
I've not really done much commissioning or production in an all-male space, but as a viewer, I liked to be able to escape for half an hour or an hour to a place where it felt I could kind of relax into my sense of a kind of fantastical vision of manhood, okay? And there's an element of that in the island as well. And really what we, I guess, should talk about as the session develops is the extent to which there are programs which give men that space to kind of unwind and be male without having to feel that everything has to be shared viewing.
And so, yeah, Reggie, what do you watch? Did you share that? Did you share that view that the sweet spot for male-skewed programming is a sort of fantastical, sacred space where, you know, women are you know,
excluded.
Yes.
I don't know if I agree with that all the way. I think a program like Top Gear was never really made for somebody like me, and I never massively watched it. I mean, as a kid, I did sort of watch it because it had that weird sort of fantasy element to it of journeys and expensive cars. But the older I got, the less I realised that Clancy was speaking to me, unfortunately. But what do I watch? I think quality drama, comedy, and I don't really think entertainment speaks to somebody like myself as much. And reality, it doesn't really speak to me. But yeah, drama and factual. Really.
So not shiny floor shows as we understand them. So not big.
No, I've fronted a couple, and I don't think that Shining Floor really does speak to me.
Tim, could you get into some extreme couponing?
Only if it involved cannibalism, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So what are your guilty pleasures? What would you, Steve? What sort of things you love watching?
I watch quite a lot of sport, a lot of drama, and a lot of comedy, really. So high-end drama, and I think what was interesting about that tape actually was just the variety, the diversity of shows.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of, you know, when we launched Dave, we kind of took the real decision at the time, which was to focus the channel about not around what we stereotypically think that men want to watch, but actually trying to treat that male audience with a little bit more respect and a bit more understanding that they are quite smart. And shows like QI and Have Got News For You, actually, there's a real smartness to those. We've commissioned Dave Gorman's My Life Is Goodish, and Dave's Yet Untitled. We've just commissioned a brand new political satire show with Matt Ford, Unspun, which goes out next month. You know, the reason for that is because we want to make shows that are right for that male audience, but actually have a little bit more depth to them. And I think a lot of the content there it just shows that variety. It doesn't have to be, as the first comment was, you know, all round objects that men want to watch, be it a car wheel, a football,
Wheels,
or anything else.
Boobs, and
You know, there is a variety that people want to watch and a variety that men want to watch, and actually that's what we should embrace. It's then find the right tonality, I think, to the shows, and the right character to the shows. But I think men want to watch great storytelling, emotional stories, great characters. You know, that's what they want to watch, which is the same as everybody else.
But it's interesting the amount of emotional, you've all talked about the emotional investment. You want to see yourself behind that luxury car. You want to be skidding across the beautiful Namibian landscape. You want to be Robinson Crusoe. So, I mean, a lot of you mentioned dramas, and particularly you, Reggie, you said you loved a good quality drama. Interesting, almost all mainstream dramas skew, can't believe I've said skew female. Just need to be taken outside. Only 13 terrestrial dramas last year had a larger male than female audience. So if we've got the graphic, yes, we have. So the top male skewing dramas, there we go. You've got Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Game Changers, Gotham, Last Kingdom, and Deutschland 83. So Nazis, video games, and superheroes. But if men aren't watching as much drama as women, what are they watching? Well, here are the top 10 programmes that men did watch, excluding sport, which rated above 800,000 in the last 12 months. That's sort of. You see, I mean, what interests me, Steve, you've talked about how men are, you know, so diverse and they're looking for. I mean, it's war or classic cars.
Yeah. Those are, okay,
That can't be right,
back
surely.
to Lies, Damn Lies and Statistics. Those are shows that are mostly watched by men, not the shows that men mostly watch.
Yeah.
So if you look at the top dramas that actually men watch, 5 million men watched Sherlock, 4.5 million men watched Night Manager, 4 million men watched Downton Abbey. So 4 or 5 times the number of men actually watch those big mainstream dramas. It's just that those shows are probably less appealing to women as opposed to what men really want to watch.
Yeah, so those are the percentiles, but yes,
exactly.
as you say, we'll get on to volume in a bit, because that's an extremely good point. I mean, Dave, would you say that Dave is a channel predominantly aimed at men, or almost, I mean, exclusively aimed at men? What would you,
not
where would you
exclusively,
pitch
no.
it?
I mean, predominantly, yeah. So
Yeah.
we've always, from day one, our position's always been that it's a channel for men, but we don't want to alienate women from that. So when we're making our content, when we're scheduling it, what we're buying and what we're producing, it has to feel like something that is going to make that male viewer want to turn on and watch it. But at the same time, we're not looking at skewing so far into that male position, and probably a lot of those shows not going that far, that it feels like it's not something that the rest of the household can't watch as
How
well.
do you quantify that? That's what interests me. How do you distill the essence of what, you know, I don't have a laboratory, by the way. I'm not asking to take it home and then actually distill an essence. But how do you sort of, how do you work out?
It's an editorial decision. It's talking with the team. So, you know, the way that we work on Dave and at UK TV in general is a very collaborative process. So we've got a fantastic commissioning team and scheduling team, research team, and we talk collectively about what we think we'd watch, what we wouldn't watch. Would that be alienating? Who's that going to appeal to? Is that going to drive the right kind of audience coming in at the right time? So we do that kind of forensic, detailed conversation to make sure that when we're spending our money to make the shows, that they are the right shows that will appeal to the audience.
How about you, Tim? I mean, obviously, Bear Grylls, hugely macho, but Hunted, a complex show actually. Did you think about skewing anything male, female when you were doing that?
I tend to, when I'm coming up with ideas for programmes or making shows, I try and think about things that I'd actually like to watch. So I don't really think in sort of male-female terms. And Hunted was all about the thrill of the chase and that kind of romantic notion. Could you disappear from your life? Which I'm sure everyone in this room has had from time to time. They want to disappear and just, you know, get away from all the stress and the angst and start again. And so Hunted sort of spoke to that. But we also thought about it. We didn't just want to make a sort of an entertainment show. We wanted to make a thriller show. So we were reading a lot of novels at the time. And that influenced us. There was a book called Rogue Male by Geoffrey Household, which is a really brilliant novel about a guy who's on the run. And so we were reading a lot of those kind of things, and they influenced the way we made the show. And I think that helped it sort of stand out from the crowd. So it tried to be more than the sum of its parts, if you know what I mean.
We had a sort of real sort of parts of it were a bit 39 steps as well. I love that, the whole escape to the
Yeah, we love all of that
rides,
stuff because we're all just trying to think of, you know, taking a near miss moment or a capture moment and thinking, how would you do that if you were making a drama out of it? And when we're cutting them, that's what we're pushing the editors and the edit producers to do all the time. Is kind of really entertain us and thrill us and keep us on the edge of our seats. And I think men do really like that. You know, I think that you know we've all got an inner sort of Robinson Crusoe or Jason Bourne that wants to come out.
We all want to be Jason Bourne.
We want to be Jason
Everyone
Bourne.
wants to be Jason
Yeah. But I think the other thing is humour as well. In The Island, we're always looking out for the funny bits. I make it with Liam Humphreys, who's head of entertainment at Channel 4, and a colleague of mine, Ben Mitchell. And we're just looking for those laugh out loud moments where someone's just sat in there and said something outrageous, you know, like they'd like to be pissed on during sex if they were having it off with Alan Sugar. And then we put it in the show because it's making us laugh.
Well,
so,
we've all been there, haven't we?
Yeah. Finally, we've all found unity in that.
Horrible mental picture.
Reggie, you're very moved by story. I mean, you know, everyone's out. The panel, your fellow panelists have talked about how narrative is so incredibly important and the ability to really see yourself in a given situation.
Yeah.
Is that what drives you to make the shows that you make?
Yes, I think I'm sort of unique in this panel. This might come off completely the wrong way, but I'm part of that generation that have grown up with the internet. So the way that we
He's saying he's young.
He knows what
we
Netflix and
understood
Chill
what he was
means, doesn't he? He knows what Netflix
Our hearing
and
hasn't
Chill
gone
means.
yet.
He's a young, virile man, that's what he's saying.
trying to get to without alienating the rest of the panel. But
Bastard.
yeah, we sort of grown up with content being something that we're drawn to as opposed to television. So
Yeah.
we don't see TV as being TV, we just see content as being the thing that we consume. So that might be entertainment from YouTube via James Corden. That might be drama from Netflix via Stranger Things. So
Yeah.
for me, it's all about story and it's all about quality as opposed to where it's coming from. So if it's a factual program, as long as there's a decent story at the core of it, that's what's interesting to me. And I think a lot of the people that are the same age or from the same place as myself.
But that's a very interesting point, and it'd be good to pick up with you, Steve, because if you're saying that the modern man, the young modern man, cherry picks content from a vast
We're
array
creating
of
our own
sources.
channels.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't go to one channel. No.
So then,
We don't go to one channel for
which is interesting because, of course, Davis is creating that one channel as a go-to place for men. Do you think that's an issue, Steve? That the fact that essentially what Reggie's doing is creating his own viewing playlist from many platforms?
If you wouldn't mind stop doing that, that'd be great. But,
Okay.
look, we know the world's changing. Technology kind of constantly moving on. We had a McTaggart speech last night that was talking very much about kind of modern content and modern content delivery.
Right.
And yeah, it's something that we can't stop and we have to embrace and we have to get on board with and not ignore. And as that world changes, TV will change with it. I mean, it'll be a slow process, I think, but we've already got, we have UK TV Play, which is our on-demand service, so, if you want to go and make your own Dave schedule, in effect, you can go and do that. You can go and watch whatever shows you want to in the right places.
Not to cut, but I disagree about it being a slow process, because I think it's already happened. I think that there's a whole generation of people that don't subscribe to the idea that this channel's for me or this program's for me. I think that there's a generation of people who are drawn to what's good. The question is it good or not where is it coming from?
I think you're right, there is a generation, but I think what we have to do as well, running channels, is look at the whole spectrum of the audiences. And I think when you're looking, as you say, the kind of 40-plus audience, who are still the majority of watching TV, and their time watching TV isn't decreasing, 16-34s is decreasing. So it is about doing that, but we are an industry, a commercial business that needs to manage that. So we need to make sure that we are able to invest in changing the way that we both make content and we deliver content to younger audiences, but making sure that we're using those older audiences who are still watching TV in a traditional way, and while the advertising market is still as buoyant as it is, using that ability to use that revenue, I think, to invest back into the future. And we've been talking, I don't want to go down to TV is dead and the TV spot is dead, because that conversation has been going on for 15, 20 years now. And actually, just before the Brexit happened, TV advertising revenue has been going up year on year for the last 3 or 4 years, and actually almost kind of record highs. So that traditional way of people watching TV and traditional way in which content is funded hasn't gone at all. But we are seeing absolutely fundamental changes in the way in which younger audiences are coming through. But as they come through, and as the 16-year-olds and the 14-year-olds and the 8-year-olds, as they become consumers and spending money, and the advertisers need to appeal to those, we've got time, not much time, but we do have time to make sure we're getting that right, because there's still a lot of work, I think, to be done in that digital environment to find the right ways to commercially pay for that content.
We talk about an older audience, and of course, this is hugely impactful because men, as they get older, are increasingly part of family units, and they might not necessarily control who watches what on the telly. So, Simon, do you think this is impactful, the fact that the man doesn't control the TV remote anymore?
Well, it's interesting. Reggie's got some good thoughts on the use of remote control as well. We're just talking about them in the green room. But what I see when I watch that is a slightly old-fashioned take on the way television is consumed in family homes. So, thanks. Good of you to bring me back in, because I was beginning to wonder after my semi-sexist comments about Top Gear if I was actually going to get the chance to say anything else.
I was just
ever
flirting
again.
with you. So
I know. I thought, shit, I might be in some hot water here. Not as much as they were, of course. But in any event, I've got 2 kids. I've got 2 boys. One is 16 and one is 14, James and Harry. And James controls the remote, in as much as we have a remote in our front room, because what he does is he during the evening he lies flat on the sofa, so my wife and I can't actually sit down very often. And
is there a medical issue underpinning that?
I don't know. I mean, do you know what? He doesn't say much. But what he does is he watches Prison Break endlessly.
Oh,
and so we've had a number. When we communicate with him, it's through the medium of Prison Break. And I've been trying to get him into The Sopranos, but he hasn't bitten yet. But his little brother, 14-year-old, he's very advanced, and he is into The Sopranos. So he's been going around the house going bada bing, bada bang, and he's been asking me what's going to happen to Big Pussy over the course of the series.
He gets shot.
Yeah, I know, he really does. Not the face, not the face. But the interesting thing is Harry doesn't even watch TV on a TV anymore. He watches it on his phone. And we know this because he recently went on a field trip to Berlin with the school. And his form teacher said that Harry and his friends one evening in Berlin had discovered an interesting new television channel, Babe Station. So I think, having kids and trying to keep an eye on what they're actually watching on television is incredibly difficult. And I think on the whole, my kids feel super served by content. and content providers, because whatever they want, it's accessible to them. The Vice guy last night, you know, once he got going, the sort of last 20 minutes of the speech, you know, you could really. I enjoyed the first half hour. It was good, you know, but the last 20 minutes were really good because that's the kind of stuff my kids are into, and they're into that short form stuff, and they want to dip in and out of stuff. And that image, it's interesting, isn't it? Men are such a soft target, because if this was a session on what women want, and we put a picture up there of someone in a bikini, big knockers, and a shopping bag, there'd be an outrage.
I know.
That is not.
Should we talk about the pay gap?
But that all right. But what my kids want, what we all want, is television that entertains and amuses and makes us feel smarter. Despite the classic image of the Neanderthal male TV viewer, we want to be made to feel smarter. That's why your stuff works. That's why my kids adore A League of Their Own on Sky. It's a friendly, relaxed, escapist, male-ish environment that they can watch and not feel embarrassed about being a boy or a man, because frankly, none of us has got any choice which way we pop out, right? Male, female. So, you know.
Also,
I set that one up for you.
Gender fluid. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah. But no, I take your point, and I also take your point about that, and possibly being a little bit reductive. But hey, you know, you can live with it.
I think
you can live with it.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to me that you're talking about the diversity of that the content's all there, whatever your kids want. But yet Babe Station was chosen. It goes back to the round circles, doesn't it? And that sort of interests me.
Well, the apple never falls far from the tree. I mean, that's...
Now, Reggie, you just made an entire series about the state of modern masculinity. Is that true?
Well, this was last year. It was a little while back, yeah.
Apologies. That's a show that you're making about sort of, correct me if I'm wrong, so disenfranchised African American kids.
Yeah, we've just literally finished. I
In
did the voiceover
Chicago.
for that yesterday. So that's a film, a one-off that we've done in Chicago. That was initially a film that we set out to make about gun crime and police brutality, and ended up being a film about the village raising the child. And I'm incredibly proud of what we found.
And as someone who just walks around on screen, can I just say it's so exciting to make a documentary like you did,
Right.
and it turns out to be something else, and you're allowed to make that instead, because that story that you're pursuing is more interesting,
Yeah.
instead of the sort of slightly top-down crushing brief sometimes that you're given. But I mean, that's an interesting story, because it's not following the classic male narrative, is it? As you say, you were sent out to talk about gun crime, which is the expected narrative. Do you think that's important as part of what men want, to give to challenge the audience and to provide new stories?
Yes, I think that the gap between what men and women want is shrinking, particularly with younger audiences. I think that the example of Game of Thrones is a great one.
Yeah.
I know you're big, you post Thronecast, don't you?
Yeah,
Exactly.
mega fan.
You're a massive fan. And I think that there's a lot of young men out there that are just as bigger fans of that show as there are young women, because it's good and there's interesting characters regardless of whether they're men or women. And I think when it comes to faction in particular, I've learned the hard way that you have to be open to being yourself, and also putting out your own belief system on screen and allowing the story to change on camera, as opposed to going out there knowing what you want to get and fighting to get what you sort of pitched.
And also not knowing, as a presenter, not knowing the answer, not going into something with a preformed idea, because then I'm sure men will be much more relatable in that situation, because I think, well, I don't know what I feel about this, Reggie doesn't know, so I'll learn with him, I'll go on that journey with him, as opposed to the old notion of presenting, which is, here's my script, here's what I feel about gun crime in Chicago, wrap off.
I think what people are excited by is this idea of not just diversity, and I don't just mean that in the sort of BAME sense, I mean that in the idea of different voices and different stories, because it's so boring to hear the same perspective and point of view on television continuously. And I think the minute that you've got original stories and fresh voices, interesting things come out.
Tim, how would you go about, I mean, Reggie's talked a lot about the younger generation, about the different ways that content's accessed, but also about the new stories that need to be told as the gap between what men want and what women want shrinks. How are you going to go about that? What's your...
Well, I try and work out what Netflix and chill means by talking to lots of young people, because I just thought it meant watch telly, but obviously it doesn't mean watch telly.
We can Netflix and chill later.
Yeah, wonderful.
I think
I'll show you what it means.
I think we're all going to Netflix.
But I just think that there are certain things that are universal that old people and young people like. I think they like really good, strong storytelling. I think they like humour. I think they like edge of their seat, suspense and drama. I think they like to sort of see themselves up there, on screen. I think obviously I do a lot of programming with ordinary people in extraordinary situations, and I think that there's an appeal to that. I think in a way you've got to stay young at heart and be ready to sort of look for humour in anything and look for a strong story in anything. And Reggie's right. Without the story, there's nothing. And I think the story is the thing that draws people into television. So when we made the first series of The Island, we did it. It was just about men, and it was in a way it was an experiment about manhood and what men are like in the 21st century when all of the trappings of modern life are removed. And Liam Humphries and I sort of worked a lot on that. I mean, we didn't really particularly think, oh, this is a series for men, but that's the way it came across. And then there was a sort of a collective scream from the media that we were sexist for having made a show that just had men on an island and women should have been on an island. And, we thought that was a bit ridiculous, really, because why couldn't you can have experiments about notions without being sexist about it. But then we did the next series, we had men on one island, women on another, and the figures went up. So I think we kept the blokes there watching it, but then we got women watching it as well. And then the third series, we had men and women on the same island, but they didn't know each other were there, and then they found each other, and the figures for that were even better. So for the next series, probably going to do something with goats or something like that to try and...
I'm in.
Great.
I'm totally in.
Yeah.
But I'm picking up your point about Hunted, which is a show I really loved. I think it's very important what you said about the audience need, whatever the demographic, the audience needs to see themselves in that situation.
Yeah.
And so when you watch Hunted, you think, what would I do? And that's why I built an underground bunker, just in case they ever do a version and they ask me. But it's very, very true. That, and actually, it's good to hear that from men, because often men, as you've said, Simon, we like to perceive them as sort of unemotional, unengaged, and obsessed with sort of, cars and boobs.
I think men like emotional intelligence by stealth,
Yes.
I think they don't want to be sort of told you've got to feel this way or that way, but if you get involved in a story which takes an unexpected turn, like on The Island, we had a story about a woman who was a soldier in Iraq, and she had PTSD, and she went onto the island because she wanted to prove to herself that she could still hack it and still do it. And she was actually brilliant. She was ordering all the men around and organising them. And then a terrible thunderstorm happened, and she had a recurrence of her illness, which is pretty awful. But you get involved in that story, and it just takes you with it. And I think that's the most important thing.
Just to add to that, I think that what young men really, really want, particularly, or just men in general, and I think that this next generation of fathers, this next generation of parents, they want to see themselves on screen, not their parents. And I think that the attitude towards women, towards the world, is massively different for that next generation of parents. And I think it's important that programmes reflect that.
Yes, and a more emotional man, and perhaps, I mean, I always want to know, what comes first, programming for a certain demographic, or men enjoying those sorts of programmes. There's an interface between those two things. There's a dance going on between television telling men what they want, and then men going, oh, I like that. And that for me is something that probably we don't have time to unpick today, but it's an issue. It is a thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's programmes made for men, and there's programmes that are made for a mainstream audience that attract a large number of men. I mean, Bake Off, we were looking at the stats in the green room, Bake Off is watched by more men than any other show on television, because it's just the biggest,
it's huge.
The biggest audience overall. So there's a lot of men watching it. But Reggie's exactly right. That I'm not going to say there's a crisis in modern manhood or anything kind of poncy like that. But the truth is, most men will lead a better life and enjoy their life more and be more sensitive and caring, better fathers, better partners, if there are programs on television which reach out to them to enable them to look into themselves and feel a bit less shit about themselves, a bit better about the way that they feel, about the conflicting responsibilities and pressures that act upon them. And that really is the stock in trade of the more female skewing stuff that Lorraine and I do at Label One. We make programs that are conspicuously tender and thoughtful and funny for men and for women. Yeah. And they do well with women traditionally, because One Born Every Minute, which we created, for example, was obviously going to do well because it's about maternity. But we're always pleased when these programs touch men. And they say that watching them unlocked something. You don't have to snigger. You don't have to snigger.
Because it's just the idea that men don't have a heart, or that men aren't invested in the birth of a child.
For example, when I watch it, I like football, but when they cut to the crowd and there's people with their shirts off, covered in tats, giving it woo, and they're all kind of like jumping up and down, I blanch, because that is not the version of manhood, malehood that I recognise in myself. They're almost like a different species to me. And my programs have never, will never seek those people out lowest common denominator, kind of like raging, charging, kind of testosterone-fueled, pissed-up men. I'm not really interested
But they
in
might
them.
also be really nice when they go home. Not
They
like
might.
hooligans.
They
I was going
might.
to say that what's important to remember is that those men actually do exist, and
Yeah.
they're part of the audience and a huge part of the audience. And I think when it comes to what men actually want, to go back to why we're all here, we just want stuff that's good, basically, I think. So, for instance, if you take an example like chewing gum, for instance, everybody watches chewing gum because it's good.
Because it's
The
good.
fact that it has a young woman at the centre of it isn't a problem, and it's not an issue. It's just that it's good, and it's also an original voice. Fleabag, it's
great.
an interesting, funny perspective that is actually quite reflective of the young experience. And that's why people are drawn to it, not because it's a woman or not because it's aimed at a certain demographic.
Yeah.
But I think just building on that as well, what we're kind of saying really is it's diversity, because we all like to watch football. We might want to watch a Jason Bourne film. We might want to watch an episode of Top Gear, but then we might actually want to watch First Dates. You might want to watch Bake Off, and
Yeah.
you might want to watch, Reggie doing a documentary on Russia, because it's variety. We are, I think, part of our human nature is we like different things. We like a variety. I kind of struggle nowadays watching, there was a talk, wasn't there, a while back about everyone watching box sets. You just sit down, you watch an entire series of Sopranos over a weekend, and I've kind of got a bit bored of that, and I can watch a couple of episodes, maybe 3 episodes back to back of a show, but then you kind of go, I want to watch something else, I want to do something different.
Well, we're all affected now by that idea of the magpie mind, because there's so much stuff out there. It's sort of almost changed the neuroplasticity of our brains, so that we just want to everything now. So we can't just do, that the old way of watching, which, as you say, was just continuously plodding through endless hours to get to the denouement or something.
But I think that's when you talk about what men want. The reality is it's a diversity of content. We have to realise there are old stereotypical men who are still living the way in which men were portrayed to be 20, 30 years ago, and there's a change in the way in which men kind of act and react now, and they all need to be catered for on TV, so therefore it's diversity in a variety of content. And what it then comes down to is, what Tim was saying, it's about great stories with great characters, with jeopardy and surprise, tension, suspense, uncertainty, and an emotional story that kind of carries you along.
I think throwing into that mix, the most important thing is original voices, because we've had the same voice for so long. It's only really in the last 5-10 years you're starting to hear some original ones.
I think producers sometimes fall into the trap of making telly about the world as they want it to be, as it should be, quite safe, middle class, liberal. And I think blokes really like watching programmes about the world as it actually is. So I loved Catastrophe because it was dirty, rude, funny, irreverent. It had, great storytelling, great scripts.
And you knew the people on screen.
Yeah, exactly. They were amazing.
You recognise them. No, you recognise them.
Yeah,
Their characters
definitely.
are
But
real.
there's a sort of
It's true,
harshness
yeah.
to it that is refreshingly honest,
Yeah.
because that's how life is and that's how relationships are.
The scene where the child walks into the bedroom and the bloke has just asked his missus to stick his finger up his bum, and the child's standing there. I was thinking, obviously that's a bad thing to happen, but it's very funny.
It's a great show. You talked, Steve and Sam, you both talked about by volume what men watch, and it's time to sort of come to that graph. So let's have a look at what men are watching by volume. There you go. Proving, of course, what we already knew, that Mary Berry still got it. Still luring all the boys to her yard.
Simon's got a good milkshake as well, actually. Check it out.
I can only imagine. So, what would you make of this? I mean, as you mentioned before, obviously Steve, but The Night Manager was watched by an awful lot of blokes. Sherlock, consistently popular. Do we think Bake Off can be explained by women having the remotes, or is there something, or is there's some emotional aspect of Bake Off that is genuinely appealing?
Presenters, fundamentally.
That's very sweet of you.
It's
very
a great
sweet.
show. I think it's a great show. It's a great show which has got great characters, great stories, great emotional journeys. You don't know what's going to happen. There's that surprise, there's that jeopardy. It has every element of what makes a great show. So I think some of that will be men kind of not getting the choice. But I mean, I don't know what the numbers are, but we have the highest level of second screens ever in the home. So there is a second TV set in majority of homes. There'll be phones and tablets in every home where if you want to, you don't have to watch Bake Off. You can get up and watch something else on another screen. But they're choosing not to. And part of that will be, I'd like to spend the evening sat on my sofa. But the majority of that will be, actually, I think this is a great show. And I want to watch it. And the same for Sherlock and Britain's Got Talent. It's slightly more worrying, but it gets worse as you go down some ways. But But they're shows that people want to watch. That is what men want to watch.
Do you think, Tim, there's a possibility of a sort of Bake-Off hunted hybrid with
Oh,
sort of
definitely.
Paul clawing his way through Bracken whilst being pursued by...
Hiding behind a Victoria sponge. I think that's a really brilliant idea. I'd like you to make it with me.
I would really happily make that show with you. So, I mean, almost you didn't pioneer it, but a lot of the shows you've commissioned do exactly that. They keep the camera out of the way and let beautiful emotional stories
Rig shows, right?
develop.
Yeah. That looks good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Was the first series male?
No, it's mixed.
Yeah, it was mixed, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Just bringing it around to the whole sort of male-female thing. Yeah, I mean, we do emotional stuff using rig cameras. I mean, not everything we do is rig stuff, but it's a good way of capturing emotion. But you know, when we pioneered the rig, it was kind of like, no one's made television that way before. That's just another way of making TV now. It's just part of the. It's just part of the sort of kit of tools that you can use to make television with. And I wouldn't say I'm getting bored with it because, you know, it continues to pay the bills. But what is fascinating about Hunted, just speaking to that clip, is the simplicity of the idea and the confidence with which you've executed it on a really big scale. And it's a nicely balanced front end, isn't it? Because you can see in there that it's going to be dramatic and it's also going to be funny.
Yeah.
I'm already predicting that 2 or 3 of the people that I've just seen are going to get caught pretty quickly.
Yeah, within 20 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure that a pink bobble hat is really the key.
I would be panic buying crisps at the local service station and just be found on
And
CCTV.
I love the 2 guys in the back of the car who've clearly been like building up to the moment that they say goodbye to their partners. They get in the back of a taxi and then, just for good measure, they say goodbye to them again. 10 minutes later, that's
very
revealing their identity and their location to the hunters.
Great.
It also speaks to something which I know Jay Hunt talked about when she did her session, which is try a show out, and if it doesn't, I know it's a slightly different theme to what we're discussing here, but if it doesn't pop first time round, then bring it back, give it another go. So First Dates was like that. I didn't run First Dates till series 3. So, you know, a lot of the hard work had been done for me. I just had to tweak it a bit. And Gogglebox didn't rate out the box to begin with. Hunted wasn't a rating smash to begin with, but the improvement is the 100 grand. It's clearly going to work better next time round. Jay, if you're in the audience, we'd like a second series of The Job Interview, which has done extremely well on Channel 4 this summer, despite some very stiff competition. And look, all of these shows, as the audience grows, just with Bake Off, they get more women watching, they get more men watching.
So it's mass appeal. It's basically down to mass appeal, creating shows that have mass appeal, that draw families in, that draw everybody in.
You want shared viewing. I mean, you know, the reason I talked about Top Gear earlier on was not just to reveal my sort of Neanderthal qualities, but because it was a program that worked on 2 levels. It was shared viewing. My wife enjoyed it. My kids enjoyed it. But equally, there would be men in that very, very big audience that were watching it solo and just loving it and would seek it out on their own. They wouldn't need the shared viewing experience in order for that to be one of the things that they would click through to, whether it was on catch-up or on a tablet or whatever. And I do think if we are underserving men in the television landscape a bit, it's by not having enough programs like that where men can let off steam. You know, obviously, you know, we're trying to change the world with programs, we're trying to reach out to the tender side of men, but they do need a place on television where they can genuinely let off steam. You know, the different sorts of American dramas have created spaces for them to do that, like Entourage, for example. You know, what's the equivalent of Sex and the City for men in a factual space? NBC have got a great new show coming out where Henry Winkler, who played the Fonz, and William Shatner are traveling around the world together on a kind of
I'm already there.
kind of utterly screwed up travelogue called Better Late Than Never. And it's effectively a super pumped up, ridiculous fact-tent version of the Marigold Hotel series, which one of the Label One's team, Tom Curry, actually made. So instead of trying to put a point on it and a purpose and, what would you do in retirement? NBC says, fuck all that, we're basically going to get the Fonz and Captain Kirk, and they are going to go and like play with an elephant's trunk. And a whole bunch of foreign people are going to look aghast at them. And I think that's going to be an absolute monster hit for NBC in America. And it's women will watch it, but it's primarily crazy old guys tour the world.
The thing is, men will primarily watch it, but if it's really good, women will come. This is the thing. It's the quality.
Yeah.
You know, men are not they're not going to watch a car program exclusively when something amazing's on.
Well, it's Field of Dreams, isn't it? If you build it, they will come.
Absolutely. So what would you build? I mean, we're going to do a few questions, but just very quickly, if I made you sort of controller of the televisual universe for a day, what sort of thing would you commission, Reggie?
Oh God, I don't know if it's what I would commission. I think I would hire young commissioners between the ages of 26 and 35 and let them do what they do best.
Let them play.
I'd be controller and I'd hire young commissioners.
Oh man, the most benign controller of all time. Tim, what sort of shows would you make?
I really like stories about underdogs coming good, and Hunted this time round is really looking at that as a subject area. I like things that are revealing or surprising, or stories that misdirect you. You think you're going one way and then you go another. So I'm in it for the plot and the development of characters and a bloody good ending.
So you'd commission sort of everything would be a thriller, and your roller coaster.
Yes, everything would be a thriller. Yeah.
How about you, Steve? What would you?
I would want to make more comedy and drama where you've got great protagonists at the heart of it who are kind of that love-hate relationship. It's that kind of the way in which they work together or love each other or hate each other or work together. When you get two fantastic characters playing off each other, I love those kind of shows, so I'll just do more of that.
That sounds pretty good to me. And how about you, Sam?
I'd start by changing the way television news is made. It makes me sort of nauseous that men, incredibly sort of ugly, aging men get more authoritative as they get older and they get a place on television news, but women get put out to grass when their looks start to fade. And
not all of them.
Not all of them, but quite a few of them. And
I take your point. It is.
And, you can be like an incredibly sort of obese, balding, incredibly ugly, badly dressed man, aged sort of 60, and have tremendous authority. But basically, if you were a woman who was incredibly obese with a balding head and an eyeball popping out your skull, but also had incredible authority, you would not get on television news. And therefore, there is a sort of an age and a gender bias going on within the world of television news, which I find a bit off-putting.
Just in television. I mean, we don't need to look very far at the whole Mary Beard.
It's so manifest in television news, isn't it? When Moira Stewart, left and then was, quietly brought back and all that kind of stuff. People get better as they get older. So if Reggie's going to address the younger end of things, I would address on my channel the older end of things, and respect and value the fact that the older you get, the more knowledge you have, the wiser you are, the more authority you have. And it's about your point about plurality of voices. We need young people, we need old people. What we don't need so much of is everyone in the bloody middle. Middle-aged, white, boring farts like me. Let's have the young people rocking it and have the old guys rocking it, and less of the me types.
And more, the world is more Moira Stewart. The world is a better place.
You can't have too many Moira Stewart.
You really can't.
And can we stop saying rocking it as well?
Well, I like rocking it. I like rocking it.
That's pretty key.
Can we do that?
Yeah.
When did I say rocking? When did I say rocking it?
Let's just move over from the rocking it. Let's just to any questions. We've got time for a few questions. Hello there.
I was interested in kind of statistics in a way, but I'm wondering, with male, the stereotypical male not being all that good at multitasking, shall we say? I don't know if that's still true. On those statistics, how many people are exclusively watching Bake Off, and how many are kind of secretly also watching something else just to
double. What do they call it?
I don't know whether that question was even asked of the men, but are they also watching something else? And in which case is that what they want?
So you're asking when the technical challenge is playing out, when they've secretly got sort of old reruns of Granada Men and Motors on a sort of feigning interest in a Dobus tort. And we've all feigned interest in the Dobus tort, haven't we? So I suppose the question there is are men watching big shows like Bake Off because they feel they have to, and are they secretly watching something else?
I don't know. I think that men are watching big shows like Bake Off as part of a family. I think it's usually sort of viewing en masse. We spoke about the box set. In my experience, the box set isn't generally something that I'd watch alone. That's the thing that I'd binge watch with people. And entertainment, I think, is something quite similar now. I don't really find myself sat down to watch TV in the way that I used to, maybe when I was a kid. I think appointment television is something you watch en masse, and something like the X Factor final or Bake Off is appointment TV.
I think it's more of an age issue rather than a gender issue as well. I think much younger end of the spectrum are multi-screening when they're watching TV, so they might be on Twitter or Facebook or emailing at the same time, whereas probably the older generation are doing less of that, and they're kind of more focused on that one piece of content.
And men slightly more likely statistically to dual screen whilst watching, but I think it's a marginal thing. Any more questions? Hello there.
Oh my God, sorry. I just had a borderline professional anxiety. My name is Stanley. I've got someone with mental health. And my question is, I'm getting a bit shaky.
No, it's okay. If you speak if it's cool, and if not, don't worry.
No, it's absolutely fine. I'm just really interested where women with mental health fit in the industry. Like, do you reckon oh God, sorry, maybe I might stop. Nerves getting the best of me, but I guess what I'm trying to say is I have always watched television from a child. It's really helped me to understand the world, life, and helped me get through life by watching television. It's been my biggest escape, and I really love the industry. I've only been in it a few months, and I want to stay in it. So basically, how can I stay? I guess that's what I'm asking.
Well, no, I think that's a good point, because what you've said is that you have been inspired by the plurality of voices, and you've navigated your way through the world by what you've seen on television, which is the same for all of us. I think that's how we've all grown up. And Reggie's point was, let's keep the dynamism of those young voices, those fresh voices coming through, so that more people get to be inspired.
And not just young voices, I think it's broad voices, and I think what you've touched on there, this idea of mental health being something that is a big part of your life, and TV has helped you sort of understand the world. I think the only way that you can truly understand the world through television is if there are broad voices and different opinions.
But also, you're talking about your own experience of staying in the industry. I mean, what you won't know is how many people around you feel the same way as you. I mean, if you've got mental health problems, you think you're the only person in the world. I mean, I've had anxiety and depression. I had three periods in my career, which has been reasonably successful, where I've had to take a week or two off for exactly those sorts of issues. And you know, I'm up here on a panel with a bright light on my face, being interviewed by the woman who presents the Bake Off, and I can say without embarrassment that I've suffered from those kind of problems. And although they hold you back at the time, you just have to keep going and have a good support network around you, and you'll get through. And it's really nice that you would choose to speak up in an environment like this, because it is one of the key ways of demystifying something which happens to an awful lot of people. There'll be a lot of people in the room now who are thinking that this chimes with them, and for various reasons they won't be putting their hand up about it, and that's fine. But the fact that you did speaks volumes about your character. So thank you very much.
You certainly are. And a big personal thank you, because you brought the session to a rather wonderful, heartwarming close. Thank you, everybody, for coming and sharing this session with us. But most importantly, a very big thank you to all of my panellists. Thank you.